Molim vas samo da mi neko potvrdi da me čuje na slušalicama.
Čujem dobro. Dobro jutro svima.
Jutro, hvala. Ok, mislim da možemo početi. Prebacimo se na engleski kako i nalažu pravila ove doktorske škole. So good morning everyone. It's nice to see you because I don't see you, but to meet with you this rainy Saturday morning. My name is Šime Vešić. Most of you know me from Faculty of Kinesiology. Along with my colleagues, Professor Sekulic, Barbara, and Tony. Okay, just a second. We have Jasna also now here. Okay, I think now everyone is here. So let me start again. My name is Šime Vešić. I'm professor of Faculty of Kinesiology. Most of you already met me there. So with my colleagues, Professor Sekulic, Barbara Givic, and Tony Modric, I'm also professor on this research methods in sporting kinesiology course, which is basically the foundation for this scientific school that you are going through yesterday and today. Yesterday you have 2 lectures, and today you have 3 on the schedule. I'm the first one today with lecture about collecting data. We'll possibly have some kind of little task at the end of this lecture. We'll see how it goes. I'm not a big fan of this online lectures and meetings because it's much better when we see each other in classroom. It's much easier to establish some communication and interaction, and that you can provide some questions to me and similar. Now, on this online way, maybe it's easier to organize since you all live in different places. But I think the effect is better when we are in live. But doesn't matter. I'll go through the slides through this topic. If you have any question during my lecture, feel free to ask. Sometimes I'll ask you for some example of something or for opinion. So don't hesitate to answer on this. Don't be afraid. So feel free to include in conversation. So, as I said, today's lecture is about collecting data. Yesterday, you have this first lecture that you spoke about, as I recall, types of researches in kinesiology and about this research process. I think Barbara spoke about this. When you need to first define some research question, the topic that is of your interest, then you need to define what kind of study it is, what it is, what design it has. You need to review the literature. I think you didn't spoke too much about this, but this is probably something familiar with, for you, since you already published some articles on conferences, on journals. So these things you know. And next stage is to collect the data that will provide us some answer to our question. To be completely honest, sometimes in kinesiology, this process doesn't go this way. Sometimes you have opportunity to test some kind of athletes or other population. I'll mostly speak about athletes since most of you are focused on sport, and my primary topic of interest at the moment is football and injuries in football some predictors of injuries and similar. So the ideal way is that you have some kind of interest, you create research question, then you explore the literature, and then you go to in process of collecting the data. But sometimes you have opportunity to test someone, and you make some tests. Then after you see what you want to do with this data. Uh, I'm not saying this is the proper way. The proper way should be the one that is on this slide. But it also can happen that you have some data, and after that you start to create a research question and think, what will I do with this? But let's keep it like by the books and proper way. Uh, we need to find our field of interest, define some question that we want to explore. For example, I'll use my field of interest. Some examples: uh, injury prevalence in youth football, uh, and then I need to see what kind of data I need to collect. Depending on this research question, uh, you will need to collect one of two major categories of variables. One are quantitative variables that are expressed with numbers and graphs, and they're used through statistical methods. And on the other side, you have qualitative data that are also can be used in analyze in statistical methods, but a little bit different statistical methods since they are ordinal or nominal variables. So we often use non-parametric statistics. Uh, in my way, for example, the types of injuries, uh, location of injuries, and similar are are collected as a qualitative data. For example, trauma or acute or chronic injury. This is collected as qualitative data. And for example, some predictors of injuries like results on the test or some motor abilities, functional abilities, running performance during the game, or similar. This represents quantitative data that I can use in my research. So often we have both types of that. But in general, in kinesiology and sport, these quantitative are uh, mostly used. And today we're gonna speak about uh, several most important and most common ways to how to collect data uh, in the field of kinesiology and sport. Of course, there are some others, but these five that you can see here: tests, surveys or questionnaires, interviews, observation, and secondary data collection are the ones who are most commonly used. And we will see uh, what is each of these and what what advantages and disadvantages they have. Probably you already met with some types of these methods, maybe all of them. Some of them are not so frequently used in kinesiology, like especially interview part, but it's also proper method. So we'll discuss about option regarding this. So we'll start with something that is most frequently used, and I'm sure that all of you have been in some situation to be involved in some kind of testing. So the tests that are very spread in kinesiology are used to collect primary quantitative data because we measure something, some centimeters, kilograms, seconds, repetitions, and similar. So mostly we have quantitative data obtained during tests. When we want to use them in kinesiology and sport, when we want to measure someone's performance, some level of fitness status, of conditioning abilities, of some kind of achievement, and also personality. Kinesiology is multidisciplinary science, so it also has impact of from other sciences like psychology and similar. Uh, So we use these tests. We have a large group of standardized tests uh, that can be used. You know that, for example, if we want to test power of lower extremities, then we can use broad jump. Then we can use some equipment like octane jump, and with this we can test counter movement jump, drop jump, squat jump, different kinds of tests. And all these tests are standardized. That means that somebody invented them, constructed, and checked their metric characteristics. We can also do this by ourselves. We can create our own test. Uh, and before we use it, we need to check is this does this test has good metrics. This is part of statistics that is called kinesiometry, and there are four major metric characteristics that needs to be optimal for a test. First of all, reliability, that this test is independent of some unsystematical errors, that there will not be big oscillation between each trials. Then sensitivity, that means that this test is proper for the population that we are used, and that in this population we can clearly say when we use this test who is good, who is average, and who is bad in this test. I'll give you one example from my experience. I had one small project regarding rowing performance in student population, and I wanted to see some predictors of rowing on ergometer, and I tested them on some different motor abilities, also morphological abilities and similar. And I used pull-up test for measure of repetitive strength of upper body. And for the male population, for the student, it was okay. It was good test for this feature that I want to measure, and the sensitivity was proper. But in woman population, in female students, uh, from 20 students, only 3 of them could do even one pull-up, and just one did more than one. So it clearly says that this test is not enough sensitive for this population, because most of this population cannot even do one rep. So we need to take care about this. What kind of test we choose for each population, and when we making a new test, constructing a new test, which is very common in kinesiology, is we need to check also this metric characteristic. Third metric characteristic is homogeneity. It means that between trials, and most of the time you have 3 trials when you do some kind of test. For example, sprint on 10 meters, it's necessary that there are not big differences between each of these trials. So it means that this test will measure every time the same ability and will not have some effect of learning on similar. With some abilities, this is a little bit tricky. We did one research on constructing balance test, specific balance test in gymnastics, and we didn't get good homogeneity because first trial was bad. After a few seconds, uh, they, uh, they fall down from this platform. On the second test, they perform much better, and on the third, they already been familiarized very good with this test, and they did it much better. So it was very big differences between these three trials, and balance is one of these abilities that is uh, very tricky to test, and you will not find so much test regarding the disability, but also the other tests have that are used have this good homogeneity. And it's important that there are no big differences between trials, that each trial is very similar. You will, in the end, you will take or average of the results, or maximum value depending on the test. But if there are two big differences, that says something about this. And finally, we need to check, is this test valid, so validity of the test, which can be looked as a factor validity, and that means that this test is measuring exactly what we want to measure. For example, we create a test for power of lower extremities, and to check its validity, we can make correlation with already validated test for lower extremities, for example, broad jump. And if our test is measuring the same thing as this one, the correlation should be high. If not, probably our test is measuring some other dimension of power or maybe some other ability. We also can check pragmatic validity of the test if to see if this test is some kind of predictor of success in certain activity. So, for example, we want to check is some swimming test is predictor of success in water polo, and we correlate test on this result on this test with some kind of achievement in water polo that can be expressed through some categorization as a good, elite, above average player or similar. And we want to see is this test is going to tell us something about real activity, not just about swimming in this case, but in a real situation, in specific situation of water polo. So these metrics are something that we need to check before we use this test. But most of the time we use already standardized test. And how we can use it, here is one example. We want to explore effects of plyometric training on vertical jumping abilities of volleyball players. Here's one example of the study. I sent you last night this presentation on your mail. I suppose you saw it, so you can open your computers if you are following this presentation on computers, and you can check. You have these links, so you can look for these researches on web. So this research was conducted on volleyball players that were divided in two groups, experimental and control group. And control group had a standard routine training, and experimental group had intervention of 6 weeks of plyometric training. They did some baseline testing in sergeant job test to check power of lower extremities. They did this experiment for 6 weeks. They did it again and check again, is there any differences? And as expected, the control group, experimental group had significantly more differences between baseline and final and follow-up testing than the control group, and which can, in practical terms, tell us that this kind of training is good for developing power. But this is not about these practical implications. It's about how we can use test in some example in sport. We have one more example how we can use this test, and this is this other part that I spoke about when you making a new test. This was studied that we in faculty kinesiology did. We created a test that wanted to measure sport specific agility, so a reactive agility. So we probably know that you have agility as a ability can be reactive and non-reactive, and there's a lot of problems with this specific test. Basic tests are very well developed, and you have it for all kind of abilities, but with the specific is a little bit more trickier. So we wanted to create some football specific test. That means that you have specific movement included in football, maybe goal in this case, yes, but it doesn't need to require a ball. And we obtained this test on the on the sample of under 13, under 13, under 15 players, and check all these metric characteristics and also some correlates between some predictors. And we saw that this test is proper, that is reliable and has good validity and other metric characteristics in this population. Of course, when you create some kind of test and you want to check validity of the test, you must be aware on which population you are doing this, because if we test this on under 13 or under 14 players, it doesn't mean that it will have same metric characteristics with adult players. So we cannot use this test on some other population and say that is already validated. It is, but on some other population. So we need to be careful with this. Now about some pros and cons of using test. First of all, when we talk about advantages, all these standardized tests that are commonly used have high validity, and we have a lot of these tests developed. They can be both laboratory and field tests, and we have a large spectrum of tests that we can use, and most of the time they are not complicated to use. The procedure is not complicated. We have, as I said, a wide range of tests, wide spectrum for most of these abilities and characteristics that are focused on in kinesiology and sport. Although some aspects of motor abilities are not so covered with the test. I already gave you example of balance test that you have some balance tests like if you talk about some equipment, you have Biodex machine, but it is very expensive and it's not so commonly used. And other balance tests like Y balance test, star excursion balance test, Stork test, and similar. But their validity and reliability is lower than some other abilities, because balance as a ability it depends on a large spectrum of factors, and it's very hard to test, especially if we talk about specific tests. And this specific test is something that still will be developed. For example, specific endurance test in each sport, because we have, for like say, team sports, we have endurance tests that are used like beep test, yaw test, 13, 15, and all other tests. But maybe we can create even more specific for each sport. And I already did some kind of researches with students for master thesis with the goal to create some kind of specific test for handball and football. And I think there's still a lot of space in that area that can be explored. Also, advantages of the test that they can give us information about very big, many characteristics of people, as we said, functional abilities, motor characteristics, some cognitive factors, cognitive and similar. Since they are used a lot, there is good probability that you have reference values for your test. So when you're testing your sample of athletes or kids of adults, recreational players, probably you will have for this test some values that you can compare it and see what is good, what is bad, and similar, and that you can use in discussion part when you exploring your explaining your results. And also one big advantage is that the results on these tests are quantitative, and for that reason they're easy to explore and to analyze, because you have big number of analyses from descriptive to relations, analysis of differences, similar, and it's easy to analyze it. On the other hand, some disadvantages. Some tests can be expensive, both in time and money. This is primarily referred to laboratory test. I'll show you after some. I'll show you now. Just a second. I'll show you these pictures. This was conducted in rowing club Kusal. It was it was part of the studies in our biochemical laboratory that we have on faculty, and the goal was to explore dynamics of biomarkers in rowing during the 6 kilometer race. This is one usual test for rowers. We did it on senior and junior population, and some of you were involved in this project. And why I'm saying this in this part of presentation, because it's a good example how sometimes it's hard to organize this test, and it takes a lot of time and also a lot of money. Because first of all, to explore these biochemical parameters, you need to have biochemical lab and all the equipment. Then you have this part of expendables like swab analyzers for saliva, for lactate analyzers, lancets, and you need to buy it every time when you have this kind of project. Then you need a lot of logistics, because we had 12 rovers here, and I think it was 10 of us researchers who were involved, because there's a lot of work first in preparation of this, because we need to take control of whole process from the moment they come in the club to the end of this testing, because we need to measure their baseline values. Then after warm-up, after the test, we need to take both blood and saliva samples, and after some kind of vigorous activity like this on ergometer, sometimes it's very demanding to get them focused and take, for example, blood sample. I can say, for my example, it was very challenging to get one rover after, although we already agree before they were familiar what we're going to do. When they finish with testing, they are exhausted, and you need to take blood sample from their fingers, and it can be tricky because they are sweating. Sometimes you miss the spot. Sometimes the blood starts to drop more frequently and similar. So it's very demanding to organize this, and it takes a lot of people, a lot of time, a lot of preparation to have this kind of test. But on the other side, there are other kind of testing that are not so expensive in terms of money and time, but also you need to be aware that you need to have good organization, to have good preparation before you go to testing. Prepare all the papers that you need to write down the results, all the equipment. You need to go test by test that you're going to do, and write down for each test what do you need, how many people you need for this test. And when you do this, it is much easier, because very often some unexpected problems jump out. About other disadvantages of usage of tests, some tests may not be appropriate for a unique population. So the example that I told you at the beginning when I spoke about sensitivity with pull-ups in girls is this kind of example. So you need to be careful what kind of test are you using. You know what ability you want to test. And then you need to take care. Do you test boys, girls, adults, what age they are, and is this test proper? Will it be performed by them good enough, and will this results will be valid and sensitive? And also, you can have sometimes problems with bias against or in favor of some group of people. Uh, what does it mean? I will tell you with this example. Uh, you want to test coordination, uh, coordination with a ball in some school children, and you make some tests with ball control between the cones with the foot. And for majority of these children, probably this will be coordination test. But for okay, just a second. Petra is here now. Also, I'll just let her in. Good morning, Petra. Okay. So the thing that I was mentioning, that sometimes tests can be biased against or in favor a certain group of people. I took example of uh, ball coordination in school children, and for most of them, this will be coordination test. But for the children that are practicing football, this will not be coordination test. It will be some easy technical exercise. So they'll perform much better, and you can think that they are better in this coordination, but maybe they are not. Maybe they just learn this this way of moving, and maybe they're not better than the rest. So you need to check, is that your test going to favor as some group of people, or be biased against them. Is For example, when you test agility in uh, some school children, there's a big difference between the children that are in agility saturated sports and agility non-saturated sports. And also there are differences between ways of movement. So if you do lateral steps, probably the one who are practicing, let's say, tennis will perform better. But that doesn't mean that in a basic that they're better in this ability. So this is something that needs to be checked before you choose what kind of test you will use in exact population. Okay, I already spoke about this project. So this was about the test as some uh, major way of collecting data in kinesiology and most commonly used. Now we skip to the second, probably it's after test, the second most commonly used method of data collection in kinesiology. And this is surveys or questionnaires. So very often some people can refer to these surveys or questionnaires as some kind of soft science, because in general is more attractive when you do this biochemical test in a laboratory, that you do when you have some fancy equipment. And when you have just paper and a pen or online questionnaire, it seems that it's like too easy to collect this data. But these kind of researches are also very valid. And I personally finished my PhD on surveys and questionnaires. And I'll talk to you about what kind of surveys and questionnaires you have, what are advantages and disadvantages. Uh, so with the service, you can collect both quantitative and qualitative data. Depends on how question is constructed, and we want to use them when we want to gain some information from some group of people uh, about their characteristics. Will not test their abilities with service because they need to answer. So their abilities will test with some test. Uh, we use it when we want to know about the opinions, and we want to get some information about the participants. I'll give you one example about this later, about this information that we can maybe collect some other way, but we can also collect them by asking participants. How we collect data with surveys and questionnaires. When I started my PhD, I did it with papers and pens, and you had to go to some group of participants, gather them around, give them paper and pen, explain the questions, and wait them to fill. Now it's much easier because we can do it online with platforms like SurveyMonkey, Google Forms, and similar. And you create the same questionnaire that you had on paper on this online platform. Just send a link or some other way, and the person can fill it at any moment. There are some advantages and disadvantages of all these two types. For sure, this online is much cheaper. You don't need to print papers, and it takes less time. And especially it takes less time in analyzing data, because when you have some group of participants answer your question, you just download this data already in Excel format, and it's easy to analyze. When you have questionnaires on the paper, then you need to take time to collect this data and put them in some spreadsheet in Excel or statistical SPSS, and then to analyze. So it takes more time. On the other side, when you have online questionnaire, you don't have control at some moments who is filling this, how they are filling it, and will they eventually even fill this questionnaire. So it's, even if you use online questionnaires, better option is that you gather them around and give them links. I will give you my example. When my topic for PhD was doping behavior in some water sports, and for rowing, I went to national championship of rowing, and I had this. It was 2019, I think, or 18, and I already this online questionnaires were started, and for sure it was much easier to do it like this than to bring papers and pens on a rowing race and force them to fill it. With this, I could gather some group of rowers and send them link all together, and I stand behind near them and help them with filling these questionnaires. Some of them were busy and told me like, okay, send me the link, I will fill it after. So then you need to be aware that you need to remind them sometimes to please don't forget to fill this. So it can be tricky, but generally it's easier than this old system on paper. It also can be conducted over the phone, but it's not so commonly used because it takes much more time. Here are some examples of these surveys questionnaires in sports science. So first example is they want to explore how much alcohol adolescents, boys and girls drinks. So we had this research about alcohol drinking among Kosovo adolescents. A questionnaire was created, and it included socio-demographic factors, some familiar factors, sport factors, and questions about alcohol drinking. And the authors tested a large group of boys and girls, and they wanted to check relations. Are there some sport and familiar family factors that are related to alcohol drinking? And they get some conclusions that, first of all, the consumption of alcohol is significantly high, and that there are some kind of family factors like levels of education of parents or sport factors, level of achieved success in sport that are related to levels of alcohol drinking. I'll give you also one example of my research that I did with my colleagues regarding injuries in rugby. As I mentioned in the first slide of this surveys and questionnaires part, we also with questionnaires, you can collect some opinions from people about some topic, but also you can collect some information about them that you didn't collect before. This was one example. Usually, when you do research on injuries, some medical person will collect the data and report it, but not with some kind of protocol, consensus. What exactly do you need to know about injury when it's occurred? What part of the body it is? What is characteristic? Was it re-injury or not re-injury? But we use questionnaire in this research where we send to senior level rugby players questionnaire about their injuries, pain status, also about some playing factors, and they fill it with our help. And with this, we obtained results that we used in analysis. Of course, this has some limitations because probably you can ask yourself now, is it possible that they didn't report all the injuries? Of course it is. Is it possible they didn't record it on a proper way? It's also possible, although in this case, it's not that they made diagnosis by themselves. They had diagnosis, but they just recall the previous injuries. But of course, these are limitations. So it's not the best way to do it when you're exploring injuries, but it's also a possibility. So when you need to find out some kind of information about the players or some group that you're exploring, these questionnaires are also valid tool. So about advantages and disadvantages of this way of collecting data. First of all, is accessibility. So now with this online service, you can send these questionnaires to different groups of athletes, people all around the world from different locations, and you can easily collect them in collect a large sample that you can investigate. So you don't need to travel to some foreign country and make tests. You can just send this questionnaire and they will fill it. Also, advantage is that these questionnaires are anonymous, and with this way, the participants or respondents, it's better to call them respondents when it's questionnaire involved, can be more relaxed about giving some tricky informations, personal informations, because they're not exploring themselves publicly, but anonymously, especially when we speak about some behaviors like drugs, alcohol, smoking, violence, and similar. And also, in the questionnaires, it's easy to get the data, especially now in these online questionnaires that were structured, and it's easy to analyze after the questionnaire is filled. And finally, you have extended time that respondents can fill the questionnaire if you send them. Of course, you need to remind them sometimes, but it doesn't mean that you need to have, like when you have testing, you come to some club, you have 20 athletes, you need to test them in next 1 hour because this is the amount of time you have. With this, you have more time, and you can wait some longer time to get the results. On the other side, there are some clear disadvantages. First of all, there can be some complex questions that need more explanation. And if you are not with respondents, if you send them through some email or WhatsApp or whatever, maybe they want to ask you some questions, some explanation, and you cannot provide them. So this can be a problem. Also, it can be a problem when you have international group of people, and so you need to use English. and maybe some of people that are not native speakers will not properly understand the question. Then when you make these online questionnaires, you don't have control who actually completes these questionnaires. So maybe this person will give it to someone else or similar. So you're not completely sure. It depends on the sample you are exploring, but it's clear disadvantages of usage of questionnaires. Also, if you are not with this group that is filling the questionnaire, if you send them and waiting for response, it's possibility that some of them will not fill the questionnaire. So low response rates is also something that can happen. Also, I didn't put here, but probably you remember when you were. I remember when I was in high school, a lot of times some kind of researchers came to our school and gave us some questionnaires, and most of the time it was about some specific behavior, alcohol drinking, drugs, and similar. And when you do this with adolescents, there is also a problem with the honesty, not because they're afraid to admit, but because they want to make fun of everything in that age. Maybe they'll feel this in the wrong way. Probably you met this kind of situation, so you need to be careful when you making research on this population. Regarding types of questions in this in questionnaires, there are different types, and the most common formats are closed question, the pre-coded open questions, combination of these two scales, and rankings. So we're gonna speak about all of this. First are closed pre-coded questions. When the respondent is asked to choose one from the list, one respondent fits him the best. And this is an example how many competitive matches you have played so far this season, and they need to tick the box which refers to them. And they are they're most easy to analyze and to explore later. Other examples are open questions, because it's sometimes not possible to anticipate all possible answers. So you give them enough space to write whatever they want. This is an example. What, in your opinion, are the attributes of a good sport coach? And you don't give them answers. You let them respond to feel what they think. Is clearly the problem that questions like this is harder to analyze. You need to probably find some categories in these answers and group them like this, because they are not that qualitative data, not quantitative and not exact, because they can vary a lot. You can have a wide range of answers. Then you have combination of open closed questions that are also very common. Basically, you have a list of pre-coded options and option to add something. So this is example, like what is the most important influence on you in your decision to take up your chosen sport. You give some possible answers, and also maybe you miss something, so you leave open space so the respondents can add some answer. Then we have scales. These are series of questions where we measure how important is something for the respondent, or how is this related to his or her. They're designed to measure some kind of attitude toward something, or opinion or something, and they have usually several questions that all together make a final score. Here's one example. Just before I start football game, I feel you have one side relaxed, another side anxious, and they need to tick the box on one other side that refers to them better. This is probably from STAI, a questionnaire that explores level of stress before some sport activity. And you have several of these questions, and the final score will be sum of results in all these questions. Here's another example of these scales. It's about alcohol drinking. You have 10 questions, and you sum all the scores for these 10 questions, and you get some final score. The high score means, in this example, that you have more, that you are more associated with alcohol drinking. So, for example, first question is how often do you have a drink that contains alcohol? From 0 to 4, you respondent needs to feel what is describes him the best. Usually on this type of scales, you have 5 or 7 possible answers. Most of the time, it's called Likert scale. Is methodologically is better that you have uneven number of answers. I will give you also my example from my PhD. I had similar table like this, and it contained possible consequences of doping usage, and the respondents need to say for each of these, there were 19 of them, how much they are afraid of these possible consequences. For example, health problems after using doping, from -3 to 3. So 0 is in the middle. So you have 7 options. This middle option is referred when you're not on either side. But in this concrete example, they had to fill if they're -3 meant that they're not afraid at all, they don't care about these health consequences, and 3 meant that they very scared about these possible consequences. So, as I said, most of the time it's uneven number of answers. And we have also ranking type of questions. We need to place order in order some in a level of importance or whatever. These rankings are appropriate when a respondent needs to classify something by order and put something in order. And this is one of an example. Please rank the following sports in order of preferences from 1 to 3. So you have with 1 signifying the sport you like most and 3 that you like least, and then you need to rank these three sports 1, 2, 3. And this is also some option for type of question in the questionnaires. So we now go to interview. As I said at the beginning, they are not so commonly used in kinesiology and sport, but we can also use them. And there are different kinds of interviews, so we're going to talk now about this. Mostly, these data that we're going to collect with the interview will be qualitative. They can be quantitative if we have a structured interview, but most of the time they're qualitative data. And we want to use them in the same way as questionnaires when we want to gain some in-depth understanding of perceptions or opinions about some topic or some information from some group of people. How we can collect data with interviews? There are basically 2 options. Make it individual, one-on-one interview, or we can have focus group discussion. We have several respondents, and you interview them all together. Here's one example about mental health among soccer players. So this was study conducted in Sweden, and the aim was to investigate perception of mental health problems in Swedish soccer players. And they interviewed 20 soccer players from age 15 to 30 in a semi-structured interview. I'll show you after what does it mean, what is semi-structured interview. They ask them about their opinions and attitudes about mental health, some risk behaviors, possible intervention, and similar. And this kind of data is hard to analyze. Sometimes you cannot use some fancy statistical methods, but they also can provide you good information in your research topic. What are the most important advantages of this kind of data collection? Sorry. First of all, comparing to questionnaires, which are restricted to some specific questions, in interview, you can they're more flexible, and they can lead you to find some more unexpected findings, because interview can go in different ways, and it will enable the respondent subject to reveal more info about their attitudes and behavior. Also, it can be more insightful than some other methods. For example, questionnaires that often explore similar topics, because it's relies on participants' point of view, and it's more focused on him than on the research. Because when you have questionnaire, it's about researchers' point of view. When you already structure all the questions, and respondents need to fill exact these questions, and in interviews it can go in different way. And also, with this plus, you can get some information from the groups that are maybe not so easy to get them to fill the surveys. Some older, younger subjects that they don't have some mobile phones, computers, and similar, or less educated and similar. On the other side, there are some clear disadvantages, like with all methods of data collection. First of all, just a second, please. I need to something. First of all, sorry, my battery is a little bit exhausted. First of all, they require more resources than questionnaire in terms of time, especially because the questionnaire you can have a group of 100 people and give them all questionnaire. They will fill it in the same time as you will interview one person. So the samples in this kind of researches are much smaller, and therefore can be a problem that they are unrepresentative. Sometimes respondents can answer you with some social acceptable answers. When you speak with someone, maybe someone will not be completely honest, but he'll give you the answers you want to hear, and this can lead to this clear bias can lead to some misinterpretation and not valid information. It's also important that the researcher leads the interview. Sometimes the subject can be dominant and lead the interview in some way that the researchers didn't want to go. So the researcher must be prepared and guide the subject for the whole time, and not to get emotionally involved, and needs to stay objective. Also, this problem with analyzing this data, as I said before, it's much more easier with quantitative data than this qualitative data that are obtained here. Okay, there's several types of interviews. We'll speak about 5 of them. So let's go step by step. The structure interview. This basically represents questionnaire that are performed in this form of interview. So the researcher reads the question, and the person who answers. Ok, nas ne me čujete? Okay, I'll continue. So it's basically a questionnaire that is read out loud. With this type of interview, we have advantage over questionnaire that you're in person with this the subject, and he or she can look for some additional explanation for some questions that are maybe complicated or not properly written. And it is basically like oral questionnaire. What can it be? Problem here is language barrier if someone is not same like with questionnaires. If someone is not a native speaker, there can be problems with understanding some question and similar. What is it's okay. On the other side, you have also disadvantage of this structured interview that it takes longer time, and it is clear major disadvantage because in the same time, as I said before, you can fill questionnaire with significantly larger group of people. Semi-structured interview is the second option of the second way how you can collect data through the interview, and it's a combination of structured questions, and we have possibility of include new supplementary questions. So researcher has some guidelines and gives question, but it also has flexible approach with some new ideas, new questions jump out, and they can be asked to subject. This is, for example, the researcher can change some sequence of questions or give more information or with some supplementary question if something emerges important or interesting and similar. Third type of interview is our unstructured interview that are like the researcher has general layout of topics. I will take example of where we want to explore in a group of football coaches. We want to explore what is important for success in football. So in a structured interview, you give them clear question. In semi-structure, you have question, but also you can add some supplementary question. In unstructured interview, you gave them just some major topics, for example, motor abilities, technical, tactical parameters, and then the subject talks about this and can lead interview in different kinds of way. And all these further questions are developed through the interview, and it depends on how researcher is skilled and how he will lead this interview. This kind of unstructured interview will allow us to get more private information, it will give more perspective on respondent than on researcher, as they can put focus on some areas that think are more important than the others. Fourth type of interview is narrative interview, where basically the researcher allows participant to speak, to develop his story. If we take the same example about research in football coaches, what is important for success in football, then basically you have football coach and you ask him this topic and let him talk about this, and he can talk about his personal experience, about some kind life histories, biography, and through this you can gain information about his opinion about success in football. In this type of injury, researcher is very little involved, and basically, as it calls, is narrative interview. The subject speaks most of the time, and you as a researcher let them speak and develop the story. Now, very often these kind of interviews are used in case studies when you have just one participant, one subject, and you use his story to make some picture about some topic. And last type of interviews are focus group, where you don't have one-on-one interview, you have a group of subjects. If we have same example again, we want to explore what is important for success in football. You gather around a group of football experts, football coaches, and you have some kind of unstructured interview with them. So you give them some topics and let the story is created by themselves with their interaction and similar. This interaction is very important element of this kind of interviews, and this is basically semi-structured interview because you have some guidelines, some topics that you give them, some exact question, and then some new will emerge and pop up, and then you will gain more information. Okay, and now we move to fourth type. We had test, questionnaires, interview, which are now still observation, and second data collection. We have 20 minutes still, so it'll be enough time. So observation, what it is. We spoke about questionnaires and interviews before, and they are based on self-reporting of something. So you ask participant what does he think about something, and you can ask them about their behavior, and that can be very subjective. It is subjective, and that can lead to bias from respondents. Other ways, when you have observation, is when you observe some behavior, you don't ask participants about it. You observe it. This behavior can be a lot of things. You will see some examples. Probably first that it comes in your mind is some kind of psychological research when you explore behavior in some groups and similar, but it also can be involved in some sport, like when you observe some of performance of player or similar. This type of data collection is a form where a researcher looks at something from outside, and it's not invasive. He has no engagement with activity or the subject. He just looks from outside and tries to see what is happening and try to analyze some activities and similar. Here's one example. We want to see how many people use some particular sport facility during some specific time, and you can do this without interfering with these people or these activities. You can use techniques like video, photography, and watching this recording data and analyze this data. With observation, we can collect both qualitative and quantitative data, and we use them when we want to understand something in this natural setting. When we test, let's say, endurance of football players, when we do test, we do it not so natural setting, because we'll do it on football pitch, but not during the football match. They just perform this test. Sometimes maybe we want to analyze their performance in the natural setting during the football match, and this is the way how we can do it with observation. So with this method, we collect data without trying to affect them, so we don't have any impact on this. Here is one example. Technical performance during the soccer match. This is something that is most commonly done with observation technique. When you need to watch the game, some sport, and you need to analyze what happens during this game regarding technical and tactical parameters. Here is one example, a study on evaluation of technical performance of football players in UEFA Champions League, when authors aim to assess how on different positions and different situational variables affect their technical abilities. So these situational variables were competition stage, match location, quality of the team, quality of opponent, and match outcome. And for each position, they want to see, are there any changes in this technical performance regarding these situational variables? Most of these studies that are analyzing some technical, tactical aspects of sport are done with this observation. And before it was harder to get these results because you have to watch the game for several times and write down all the moments, all the things you see. Now, in some cases, it's easier because, for example, in football, if you want to explore this technical performance, you have already some softwares that provide you a lot of information about passing, shooting, duels, and similar. And you can basically get this data without even watching this. And this is something that is also connected with this last part of this presentation about secondary data collection. We'll talk about this later. One example of this kind of study is one research that I conducted with my student for his master thesis, and I'm very proud of for his work because we try to analyze, is there any differences in technical performance in football players when they play with and without fans. We use this COVID season and Premiership League. We analyzed the technical performance with fans and without fans. And this is kind of observation study when you don't interfere with their action. You watch the side and you see some actions, data, you collect them, and then you can explore some differences and relations, whatever you want. So regarding this type of researches, there's also some advantages. First of all, that this takes place in natural setting. As I said before, you will explore someone's behavior and performance in his normal environment, no artificial surroundings or some that you have during interview, questionnaire, and test or similar. With this way, you will have identification of real behavior because you'll see the subject in his normal environment, and they will behave. They will not know that probably that you are looking at them. For example, if we're exploring some technical parameters, then of course they don't know that you're looking at them. I mean, they have pressure from the because they played publicly, but you see them in natural setting, and you'll see their true behavior. If you want to explore some kind of psychological aspect, some dynamics in group, if they are unaware of that someone is watching them, they will act normally, and then you have real information better than the one that you get from the questionnaire when they feel by themselves and give their subjective opinion. And this is what I was speaking. So with this way, the participants can open some things that maybe they don't want to open in the interview questionnaire, and then you will see them like you get a full picture about their behavior. On the other side, you have disadvantages. First of all, it takes time for this to conduct. Then it's very important that the researcher is experienced and focused, and he cannot misunderstand what he's seeing. Uh, and there can be problem if he doesn't have enough experience. Is sometimes is problem with data recording if you are sometimes you need to repeat for a few times because it's possibility that you miss something that can be key issue. So you need to be careful with this. It is possible that if the subjects are aware of presence of researcher, that this will affect them and this will affect their behavior. And the most important thing is that this observer is skilled, that he knows this topic, that he knows what he's doing, what kind of information he needs to gain, because if not, then who knows what kind of information we will get from this. And last part of this presentation, this is last method of data collection. This is secondary data collection. And what does it mean? First of all, this means that these are some kind of data that we in person don't need to measure them, but we can get them from some other source. They can be quantitative or qualitative data, of course, and we use them when we want to analyze some population that we don't have access in the first hand. For example, yesterday I have one master thesis for my student, and the topic was differences between drafted and undrafted NBA players and some motor abilities. This is type of research that is probably impossible for most of us to done it in person, in the first hand, because it's very hard that you will get 300 NBA players all together and make the test that you want to make. But good thing is that they all do this combined testing before they enter the NBA league, and that these data are available, publicly available on net, and everyone can see it and everyone can use it. So you get a lot of researchers on this kind of data, especially in USA sports like NBA, American football, baseball. There are a lot of this testing done, organized by the leagues, and they're publicly available. It's a similar thing is with this technical performance of football players now when you have all these platforms that analyze this. Basically, you don't need to do this hard job. You just need to have account on that application or whatever and download the results. How we collect data with this? We need to find existing data set that has already been collected. Here, I think I put two examples. First example is how to determine success in sport climbing. And this is type of review study. So these authors explored all the other previous researchers that with the topic of determinants of success in climbing, and then make systematic review, and they gather all the results together, and then make some on this larger number of researchers. They make some conclusions. What are important elements in climbing? For example, here they concluded that hand, forearm strength, and endurance of high importance in climbing. So this is a type of research that are very good for us when we work in practice, when we want to gain knowledge about some aspect of kinesiology of sport, when all, not all, but majority of most important researches are summarized in one research that will give you clear information. And basically, in this review, you don't need to make, they didn't make tests with all these groups of climbers, but they collected data from other studies and make their own research. This is other example. As I said before, this is NBA combined. This is not the test, the study that we did, but some similar study. They analyzed the relationship between playing time and performance on NBA combined test in some basketball players. So these are data that they gather from some other data set. First of all, these results on the test, and then they used some playing time, some technical, tactical parameters, and they made analysis. They can have you can have very important findings in this kind of researches that you didn't done any test by yourself. You just collected data from someone else, and especially is important when you have this kind of elite sample, like in this study. So, what are advantages and disadvantages of this kind of data collection? First of all, what is clear that this kind of data is easy to collect, as you don't need to make some testing, you need to organize, and you don't need to make questionnaires and interviews and similar. You just take someone else's data, and it's not illegal. They are publicly available, and this is proper. So you don't need additional effort. You don't need to use your time to search some participants for your study to motivate them, which is very often a problem. You need to, when you want to test some players, you need to speak with the coaches. We need to speak with the players and motivate them, emphasize the importance of this testing, why it is important for them, and you always have doubt. Did they give everything they could in this kind of testing? And also, this type of data collection is very cheap. You don't need any resources to get this kind of data, and they already validated and reliable, because in example of this NBA combined test, this is something that is conducted on very professional level. So you can be assured when you take this kind of data that for sure all these tests are conducted in proper way, that it's not that someone cheated or something, that someone tested in the wrong way. So you can be sure that these data are really valid and reliable. On the other side, what can be major disadvantages of this kind of data collection? Maybe your field of interest has some other population, and you don't have enough data. You don't have any data set available for the topic you are exploring. And also, just a second, Professor Sekulic will enter here. And also, these data maybe are covering some other research question that is not of your interest. There's also a possibility that these data are maybe too old and outdated. And one of the biggest disadvantages of this kind of data collection is that since they're already available, then probably someone already did this that you want to do. So it's a great possibility that this idea that you have that already someone did, because this is publicly available. You can use this data. Everyone can use this data and explore it in a different way, but that doesn't mean that there are not some part of analysis that you can do with this already recorded data. Okay, so basically we come to the end. I had the idea of making some tasks, but we ran out of time, and it's not. It's a little bit difficult now in this online environment to do it. So just to have a short recall what we did this morning, we talked about the process of data collection, and we mentioned first the test as the most commonly used in kinesiology sport, then surveys and questionnaires with different with different types of this surveys, then interviews, after that observations, and now secondary data collection. And I wanted to give you example of all of this and some pros and cons for all of these types of data collection that you can use. So that's basically it for me. Do you have any question now before Professor Sekulic will start with his lecture? Professor, I'll make you as a host now. Okay. I suppose there are no questions.
Now I am a host.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, Shima, I sent you today's lessons PowerPoint presentation, so please forward it to students because I don't know the addresses of all of.
I send my presentation. I'll send also now this topic.
Yeah, thank you.
But sorry, what topic they have now?
I sent you just sent you an email with the attachment.
Okay. On email.
Yeah, Gmail.
Yeah, be now.
Sorry, now.
Okay.
Oops. Once again. Okay, let's have a break of 5-10 minutes, 5 minutes max, and then we will start about 9:35. Then you will have the presentation and so on. It will take some time because my upload is enormously slow on weekend. Shima, would you mind please send 9 to 10 data analysis?
Okay. I get it now.
Thank you.
Oh no.
Yeah. No. There is no attachment.
No. But I have a presentation. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll start at 9:35. We will continue with the lessons. So see you in a couple of minutes. Thank you. Šime. Okay. Please, izađi sa stanka da mogu ja pokrenuti snimanje, jer ako ti izađeš, a ostane snimanje, neće se snimati.
Da izađem samo ja, ok.
Samo izađi kao key fest, pa ću ja pokrenuti.
Ok.